mentioned recently in part of Sunday service that I would be telling my full story, so here I am. I've written something down, but it couldn't be the full story or I'd be here for days. So I've just given you a long version explaining my spiritual journey and how I came to be born again in Christ later on in life. And it was right in the middle of a time where I was completely off track from practicing God's will. I'm not judging those who practice these things. How could I? I did this for years, but for me, my story ends with Jesus saving me. So, as I previously mentioned, I was christened when I was young, but I was never a churchgoer growing up. Church made me feel very uncomfortable. If songs of praise was on in the kitchen, for example, at my mum's, I would back out of there saying, "Oh, this makes me feel weird." If I was at a service for a wedding, I spend most of my time feeling agitated and making faces at my sisters. It's like something was just fighting, wanting anything to do with it. Strange, really. I went through my life up into my late 20s. I was seeking friendships that weren't right for me. I'd go out partying most weekends and drinking heavily, attempting to gain comfort in some sort of material goods like fashion. I was chasing some sort of identity for myself. I didn't know who I was. And the world offered so many choices that it was head spinning, really. It seemed that no matter how who I became, no matter how many friends I had, I never felt content or fully satisfied with my life. Deep down I felt quite empty, and I couldn't shift this feeling that everything I was chasing was meaningless. I will add that I had become a paediatric nurse during this time, and that care for my patients I found extremely fulfilling. I'm focusing on my time outside of work. So at times I'd feel depressed and anxious on and off through the years, and I think along with this came this sense of spirituality within. I'd really sense it if I was on my own, like a feeling like I wasn't on my own. For years I wouldn't let there be quiet. I'd feel a constant need to be on the phone or looking at social media, anything but the dreaded silence and facing myself, basically. The world has plenty of distractions now. However, now I'd start to feel this strong longing for something that I found hard to explain to other people. I wanted more out of life, and the people that I sort of tried to explain this to, they didn't understand what I was getting at. I felt pretty alone with it. So eventually I did turn to some people that introduced me to a spiritual movement. It's New Age spiritualism. And I don't want to go into this too much, as there's a lot I could tell you. But what I will say is that it is dangerously appealing to those who are lost spiritually. So I was quite intrigued by what I was hearing at the beginning of it all, and I did lots of research. I watched videos on spiritual science and the geometry of the universe, and it truly had me. I felt excited, like I was on my way to finding out the secret of life and the afterlife. And before you knew it, I was practicing meditations in which I would cleanse my chakras and align my chakras, in turn having this feeling of a spiritual awakening, I guess. I'd use guided meditations most of the time, because you could just YouTube them and they'd talk you through it and get you to visualise things. It's amazing how much of it is out there, actually. They'd talk you through like breathing in this universal energy, and that's what really became my higher power, was being one with the universe. And I would feel it. It gave me a sense of enlightenment and a relationship with the universe, but it was an impersonal force. At times I'd feel energy flowing through me when I meditated with these visions, like almost like I could see it coming off of me, and I'd look down at my hands after, expecting to see something, like I was some sort of superhero. But it was deceit. Ultimately, at one point I was just focusing on opening my third eye. Once you enter this world, you start opening up to more and more. I would end up talking to angels, looking for answers through spirits and like angel numbers. I had oracle cards at one point. crystals that I would charge at night. I received Reiki treatments and so forth. I even attended a 3-day festival in the hope that I'd meet someone there who would reveal more truths to me. I was involved in practicing this for about 3 to 4 years on my journey before it took a complete turn when I was reading something that mentioned Jesus. And I didn't take too much notice of it at the time. I was just surprised to see Jesus mentioned in what I was reading, as it was one of my psychic magazines. And not long after this, Jesus was brought up again in a book I was reading, and that time I just couldn't ignore him. I became quite curious. Like, what was Jesus doing in these sorts of books and magazines? I didn't think that would cross over. It sparked off something of curiosity. So not long after this, I was given a Bible, as I had been speaking my curiosity to people in my life. And I started to read the Gospel of Matthew, and as I've previously mentioned, as soon as I started to read the parables taught by Jesus, this is when I became completely filled with the Holy Spirit. In that moment, everything changed for me. I was changed. He was speaking the truth that I'd been seeking, and everything that he was saying I already had written in my heart. I knew it was the truth instantly. For the first time in my life, I cried happy tears. It's hard to explain, like a feeling of being set free from all those questions. I had all this love in my heart already, and now I felt completely and utterly connected. I knew where it was coming from. So it's very personal and it's hard to explain. It's just like this peace in your heart, knowing that he's with you and that he loves you. I felt ashamed of myself for not seeing what was that he was there earlier on, but I knew I was forgiven. I could just feel it in his love. He was really patient with me because he'd been with me all through my journey, just waiting patiently for me to realise that it was him that I was seeking. So I prayed for forgiveness and I repented, and I was set free from this world. Jesus spoke the truth, and it was pretty simple for me suddenly. Instead of going off into this messy world of looking for questions and getting more questions. So I continued to read my Bible, and I watched online sermons for around a year. I literally made a holy playlist on my phone that I would listen to every Sunday and sing and praise to the Lord. It certainly made my sister, who I live with, feel a bit strange at first. She's not a Christian, but she's used to me now. So I shared the good news with everyone present in my life, and I was desperate for others to see the light. But I knew that I had to tread delicately, as I had been so opposed for so many years. I knew I'd have a number of different responses from people, and I did. Some people were happy for me, others laughed at me. They just couldn't take it seriously. They couldn't handle hearing me speak like this all of a sudden, and others argued with me. My best friend and my sister, who were already Christian, were celebrating with me though all along the way, and then I later found out that Lucy, my friend, had been praying for me for a long time to find Jesus. So thank you, Lucy. When I thought back to all the New Age stuff that I'd been involved with, I was having all these light bulb moments go off, like, okay, so that was deceit, and that was a lie. Clever. I never went back and got myself involved in it ever again. For the first time in my life, I had a conviction to live my life righteously before God, which, well, when I was in the New Age, the conception of sin doesn't come into it, but I suddenly had this personal calling inside of me. He was prompting me to read my Bible, to study it and learn more. The more I divulged and prayed, the more I felt Jesus' presence in my life and his calling. He was suddenly becoming my priority over pleasing other people, which wasn't easy, as I've always been a people pleaser. I was also quite easily influenced by others in my life, and so when I suddenly couldn't be persuaded to do something that went against my faith, some people in my life struggled to see this new version of me. I could literally feel their disappointment. I know a few of them hoped it would be a phase. I was being prompted to get rid of all my New Age products that I had in my home, and it actually took a few months to do so. A Christian friend of mine, Lucy, reminded me that I needed to get all of that stuff outside of my house, but there was still something making me hold on. So I got into my prayer, and along with more Bible reading, and one day I just grabbed the lot and binned it with ease. And that's something I thought I'd find really difficult to do after it being such a huge part of me for years. So when I felt ready to find a church, I explored a few. However, from the moment I stepped into St. Nicholas's church, I felt at home in that environment. I was welcomed with smiles and acknowledgement from everybody that I met eyes with that day. I then was met by Alan, who I introduced myself to, and explained it was my first time, and he offered me seating wherever I liked, as I was there pretty early, or would I rather sit with Val and Peter and they could talk me through it. I was so relieved by this offer, as there was so much unknown to me at that point. Val and Peter were so reassuring. They explained the communion booklet to me. That's we only say the bold print. Believe it or not, I did need that explained to me, or I might have tried to take the entire service. I experienced my first offering of peace that morning, which is the best feeling ever. The smile that came across my face when I was like, oh my gosh, everybody's coming up to me and offering peace, and it's just amazing. I think I smile just as much every time that I do. I mean, I miss the peace right now, but I smile just as much that I do the peace as I did on that first occasion. I had no idea what would be happening with the communion, so this was explained, that I would receive a blessing, and I would just need to kneel down with my arms by my side. These simple things are quite big to a newbie, so I was so grateful that it was explained to me. My name was said during my blessing, which made me feel really connected. The sermons were uplifting and inspired me further into my faith, and I really couldn't wait to go back the following week. After the service, I had coffee, and I was introduced to a lovely lady called Margaret. Margaret gave me her number after I explained to her my hunger to learn more about Jesus and the Bible. And she arranged for me to join the tail end of a alpha group that her and Sue were running at the time, and the course introduced me to more wonderful people. I still can't believe how comfortable I felt. I had all these irrational thoughts before, like I didn't know what to wear, would I fit in, or would I just stand out like a sore thumb? And all of that went away from the moment I entered church that first day and met everybody. I never felt one bad judgment, and I still haven't. It's just lots of love and friendships from people from all walks of life all coming together. So I felt the need for some question time. I did have a lot of questions I wasn't ready to sort of do during the alpha in front of people, as I was so new. And Sue, I mentioned this to Sue, and before you know it, I was around Sue's having all my questions answered, even some stuff to take away with me. And Sue hadn't just she'd listened to me. She hadn't just answered my questions. She'd been a friend to me that day, and prayed for me after our meeting. And my faith had just grown stronger than ever since this. My personal life had been crumbling around me at the time, and I was being given a deal of I was being given extraordinary strength through prayer to deal with those heavy times. But I made sure that I continued forward with church and seeking fellowship. Everything was falling into place. All the while, I continued to ask God for wisdom, protection and courage through my journey. As the Alpha course finished, Alan had mentioned that he was starting a year-long course that would be explaining the Bible and much more. And this was everything I'd been looking for as well. So I truly believe this series of events and me coming into the church was God's will. You can't really make up the timings and where I was at in my life. It was all laid out for me. Each week I couldn't wait to attend my course at Allen's and meet the group. We were growing together. Throughout the weeks attending church and all my courses, I felt like everything that could come crashing down continued to do so in my life, more than ever. During this time I turned to Alan at my time in need, and he kept me in prayer along with the church during this time. At times I was feeling so drained and struggling to keep up with my prayer life that I did need some support. I've learnt continuously that Christian prayer is so very powerful. Miracles have happened in my life, in each area. I'm sure life will throw more testing times my way, without a shadow of a doubt. But I'll have the Lord there with me to get through them. So I am so grateful for what God's done through St. Nicholas's Church, for being saved. I see him shining through the church, and I'm so very excited to see what he does have in store for me. If I've learned anything, it's that it will be in God's time, so I will just watch his space. And again, thank you for listening, and God bless.